sleep with a nightlight, convinced its soft glow would protect me. No one told me monsters can wear your last name. No one warned me that the scariest things don't hide in shadows but sit across from you at dinner, smile in family photos, and call you kiddo while holding secrets darker than any closet. My monster had blue eyes. My monster was my brother. My name is Emma. I was born in West Virginia, in a town where everyone waves and nothing ever happens. Our house had peeling paint and a creaky porch swing. My mom kept the garden alive. My dad fixed everything but himself. I was the youngest 3 brothers, 1 me. My mom called me her miracle. My dad never called me much at all. I knew my place, small, quiet, out of the way. That's how good daughters survive in houses like ours. Caleb was 13 years older. He had a charming smile, golden hair, and the kind of laugh people trusted. Teachers adored him. Neighbors offered him keys. To me, he was a hero until he wasn't. The shift came slow, like fog creeping in. A touch that lingered, a compliment that felt too warm. I didn't have words for it back then, just a feeling, a shiver. And one night a knock on my bedroom door that would change everything. He brought me a bracelet that night. "For my favorite girl," he said. Blue beads, cold against my wrist. I smiled because I didn't know better. When he came into my room after lights out, I thought he just wanted to talk. He told me I was special, that I was growing up, that what we were doing was love but only for us. He made me swear to keep it a secret. "If Dad finds out, he'll kill you," he whispered, and I believed him. It didn't happen just once. Every visit home from college, he brought gifts: lip gloss, a book, candy I liked. Then came the silence, the door clicks, the weight of him in the dark. I tried to sleep with my back to the wall. I tried not to cry, but nothing stopped him. He said I was his, that I should be thankful someone loved me. I was 11. I didn't understand what love was, but I knew this wasn't it. Still, I said nothing. I changed. I stopped talking as much. I flinched at hugs. I failed a spelling test, then another. My mom called it teenage moodiness. My dad barely noticed. At 12, I avoided mirrors. I avoided myself. I didn't know how to carry the weight of what I couldn't name. I didn't know how to exist in a body that wasn't mine anymore. Sometimes, I pressed my nails into my arms just to feel something that was mine and only mine. At 13, the sickness started. Mornings were the worst. I'd sit by the toilet, shaking, blaming cafeteria food or hormones. But my body kept changing. I grew out of my clothes too fast. My skin stretched in ways that made me want to disappear. I kept hoping I'd wake up and be a child again, clean and untouched. But then I fainted in math class. The nurse touched my wrist gently. "Emma," she said, "is there any chance you're pregnant?" I laughed when she asked, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't belong in my throat. "No," I said. "Of course not." But her eyes didn't leave mine. I looked down at my shoes, muddy, frayed, too tight. That's when I knew she knew. I was sent for tests. I prayed the machine was broken, that maybe I was just cursed with bad timing. But when the nurse came in, she didn't need to speak. Her eyes did. My nightmare had a heartbeat. They called my parents. My father's silence on the drive home was worse than yelling. I stared out the window, counting mailboxes, pretending each one was a mile away from the truth. When we pulled into the driveway, my mother was already at the door. She looked scared, like someone had died. Maybe it was me. My father dragged me into the kitchen and slammed the door. "Who did this?" he barked. "Who?" I couldn't speak at first. My mouth dried up, my knees wobbled, my voice was dust. Then I whispered, "Caleb." Just his name, one word, heavy as thunder. My father stared at me, stunned, then laughed, short, sharp, cruel. "You lying little bitch," he said. "You think we're stupid? You think you can ruin this family with your filth?" His belt was already off the wall before I had time to flinch. And then, pain. Blinding, bone-deep pain. Each strike spoke louder than words. Liar. Whip. Whore. Whip. Ungrateful. Whip. I fell to the floor. My mother didn't move, didn't cry, just stared at the tile. I crawled into myself, thought of clouds, of the baby, of disappearing. He only stopped when his arm got tired. I couldn't cry. I just lay there, numb, wishing the ground would split and swallow me whole. I heard him say, "No one will ever believe you." And I believed him. After that, I became a ghost. My belly grew, but my voice shrank. I stopped asking for things, stopped expecting kindness. My mother left meals outside my door, but never looked me in the eyes. My father spoke only in threats. "You'll say it was some boy from school," he said. "You'll shut your damn mouth." And I did, because even monsters sleep, but not guilt. Guilt wakes you at 3 a.m. and reminds you that no one is coming to help. I started talking to the baby again. I told it stories, not the real ones but made-up ones where we lived by the sea and laughed in the sun. I named it Hope. It was the only name that didn't feel like a lie. At night, I held my belly and hummed lullabies I barely remembered. Some nights I felt kicks. Some nights I begged it not to hate me. "You didn't ask for this," I whispered. "But I promise, I'll protect you, even if it breaks me." Jenny noticed. She always noticed. One day after class, she cornered me near the lockers. "Emma," she said, "what's going on?" I looked away. "I fell," I muttered. She gently pulled up my sleeve. Her eyes went wide. "That's not a fall," she whispered. "Please, let me help." I shook my head, but she didn't listen. She told her mom. Her mom called CPS, and that's when everything unraveled. Not quietly, but like glass under boots. 2 days later, they came to school. A woman in a gray sweater and kind eyes. A man holding a clipboard like a weapon. "Emma," she said softly, "we'd like to talk." My heart dropped. "It's okay," she added, "you're not in trouble." But I was always in trouble. That's what home taught me. I said nothing. But the bruises spoke. The nurse's records spoke. Jenny's mom spoke. And suddenly, my silence was no longer protecting anyone. I was taken straight from school to a shelter. I didn't even get to go home for a bag. Just a car ride through streets I'd memorized in fear. The city looked different through the window. Bigger, farther. At the shelter, a woman handed me a blanket, soap, and a peanut butter sandwich. I stared at it for 10 minutes before I could take a bite. No yelling, no belts, no footsteps in the dark. That night, I cried from the strange safety of silence. Carla ran the shelter. She was tall, calm, and smelled like cinnamon. She didn't ask questions. She made tea. She folded my laundry. She told me, "You're not broken, you were hurt." I didn't believe her, but I wanted to. I wanted so badly to believe that I was more than what Caleb did. That I could still be Emma, not just the girl with a growing belly and old bruises. She touched my shoulder once. I didn't flinch. That scared me most. The baby was due in 6 weeks. I was 14 and terrified. A social worker told me I could choose adoption, foster care, even a closed file. But every time I felt hope move inside me, I felt something else, toward assistance, maybe even love. I didn't want to erase her. I wanted her to have a story better than mine. I wrote her letters every night. "Dear Hope, I don't know how to be a mother, but I know what not to be. Maybe that's enough." Then came the day I had to testify. Against Caleb. Against everything I was told to stay silent about. I wore a borrowed dress and shoes too big. I held my hands in my lap so no one could see them shaking. When I said his name in court, I felt the room stiffen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just spoke. My voice cracked, but it didn't break. I told them everything. And when I was done, I looked at him and he looked away first. Hope was born on a rainy Tuesday. She was small, quiet, and pink like the inside of a seashell. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I thought I'd feel anger or sorrow, but instead, I felt warmth, wholeness, like a final stitch pulling a wound closed. I whispered, "You're safe now." And for the first time in years, I believed the words I was saying. Her eyes opened, brown, like mine, not his. And just like that, I started to heal. Sometimes I still have nightmares. I still feel the weight of that house, that silence, that blue door. But I also hear Hope's laugh now. I see her toddle through grass. I hear her call me Mom. And I know I gave her something no one gave me, a beginning without fear. I was hurt. I was silenced. But I survived. And every time the sun hits her curls just right, I remember what strength looks like. Not loud, but steady and alive. Hope grew slowly, like a song warming up. Her first laugh came during a thunderstorm. She wasn't afraid, she clapped. And I cried, not from fear, but from the realization that she wouldn't carry my scars. I was raising her in a world I rebuilt with trembling hands. Each diaper, each bottle, each bedtime story was a quiet act of defiance against the past. Every kiss on her forehead whispered, "You will not know the darkness I came from." I stayed in the system until 16. Group homes, foster families, some kind, some cruel, but none of them were Caleb. That was enough. I worked part-time at a bookstore. I read in every spare second books about brave girls, about soft mothers, about love that didn't hurt. I saved money in a shoebox. For hope, for an apartment, for the future. I didn't know how to be a parent, but I showed up. Every day. And that was a start. Sometimes, I wrote letters I never sent. To my mom, to my dad, to Caleb. I'd write things like, "You could have stopped it." Or, "You broke me, but not forever." Some nights, I tore them up. Other nights, I read them aloud to the wind outside the window, just to feel like someone heard me. Hope once asked, "Why don't we visit Grandma?" I smiled and said, "Because some people live in houses, but never make them homes." She nodded. Hope's school called her bright and gentle. Her teacher said she always made room at the lunch table for others. I watched her grow like a flower in sunlight, and some days I let myself imagine, what if I had been born to a different family? One with soft words and safe hands. But then Hope would run to me with scraped knees and tearful hugs, and I'd remember. She is my beginning, not my end. My proof that survival is sacred. I never told Hope the full story, not then. She grew up with laughter, birthday candles, and bookshelves, not fear. I gave her the world I never had, and kept the weight of my past locked away. But time has a rhythm, and children don't stay children. One day, her eyes looked too much like mine, quiet, knowing I knew the time was close. She deserved the truth, not to carry it, but to understand the woman who once carried her. She's 26 now, a woman with her own apartment, her own dreams. We talk on Sundays, drink tea like friends. I watch her live the life I prayed for, her freedom without apology, and yet, there's still a distance in me. A sealed door I've never opened. I wrote her a letter last winter. 4 pages, my truth, raw and trembling. I never mailed it, but I keep it by my bed, folded soft with time. I'm waiting for the right kind of silence. Last week, she asked me, "What was your childhood like?" I smiled the practiced smile. "Complicated," I said. She didn't push, but her eyes stayed on me a little longer. That night, I stayed awake. I imagined her holding my story in her hands. Would it break her? Would it change how she sees herself? I've spent years protecting her from shadows. But maybe she needs to see them to understand how hard the light had to fight. There's an ache in honesty, a trembling before the leap. I waited until a rainy Sunday, when we were both still, no noise but the clock. I poured us tea, held the warmth in my hands, and said, "I have something to tell you." Her face softened. "Okay," she said, and I began, not with Caleb, not with pain, but with love. "You were born in fire," I whispered, "but you became rain. You washed it away." And then I told her everything. I told her about the bracelet, the blue door, the kitchen floor. I told her about silence, and belts, and how monsters can smile. She didn't speak, just listened. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry, not yet. I told her she wasn't a mistake, that she was the only light in a very dark tunnel. "I chose you," I said again. "Even when no one chose me." And then she reached across the table and held my hand like I was the child now. She cried later, not for herself, but for me. She said, "Mom, I had no idea, and I told her she wasn't supposed to. That was the whole point. You're the part of my life I kept pure," I said. "You are proof that love is stronger than what tries to destroy it." She didn't speak again for a while, just sat there, quietly crying. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder, and I realized I wasn't protecting her anymore. We were healing. We went for a walk after that. The rain had stopped. The world looked rinsed and soft. She asked if she could read the letter I never sent. I nodded. That night, I watched her read it by the window. Her back straight, her breath steady. And when she finished, she turned to me and said, "I'm proud to be yours." My throat closed, my heart opened, and in that moment, I knew my story no longer belonged to silence. It belonged to love. A few years after telling Hope the truth, we got the call. "He's been arrested," the officer said. "Multiple reports. You weren't the only one." My knees gave out, not from grief but relief. Caleb's victims had finally spoken. And this time, the world listened. Testimonies poured in like rain after drought. He stood trial not just for what he did to me but for the others he'd broken. We watched justice arrive, late, but not empty. He was sentenced to 25 years, no deals, no leniency. He left the courtroom in silence, the way monsters do when the mask no longer fits. I sat beside Hope, our hands clasped. My mother never showed. My father had died years before, never saying my name again. But I wasn't alone. I had my daughter, my voice, my truth. I walked out of that courtroom taller. Not because justice fixed everything, but because I had survived it all. We visited a beach that weekend, just me and Hope. We didn't speak much, just watched the waves roll in and back out again. "You're free now," she said, her voice barely above the wind. And I nodded, not just because Caleb was behind bars, but because I had finally spoken, finally been believed, finally handed my own ending. I pressed my feet into the wet sand, firm and steady, and for the first time in decades, I felt clean. This story could have ended in silence. It could have been buried in shame, sealed in a box called the past. But I chose something harder. I chose to speak, to break the cycle, to raise light in the dark. If you're hearing this, it means the silence stopped with me. And if you're carrying pain like mine, please know this. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are not what they did to you. You are still here, and that is enough.